Hello everyone. As you all know, I regularly and consistently post wrap-ups at the end of the month where I talk about all the books I read that month. This is definitely something that I have done consistently throughout the last year, and I don't want to hear otherwise. I read 4 books in January, which a book a week is I've slowed down from my peak days. I used to aim for a book and a half a week. Book a week is kind of the target for this year. So I'm reasonably happy with that. A couple of the books were pretty short, but in fairness, one of the books was quite long. So the first book I read this year, finally, was A Betrayal in Winter, which I read on Makobo. Betrayal in Winter was really good. I starting off, in the first chapter, I was like, I don't remember any of these people. And then someone was like, that's because they weren't in book 1. And I was like, awesome. And there'd been a time skip in world. At times I was definitely like, wait, what happened that they're referring to here? But mostly the big break didn't seem like too much of a problem. I already quite liked The Shadow in Summer. I gave it a score in the mid-8s. This originally got a 9.0, but then the great rating drop of 2024 happened, which if you follow me on Goodreads, you know one day you randomly got spammed, and that is because I looked at the total of my ratings and was like, oh, I've been just giving everything a 9.2, and 29 books have a 9.2, and then 3 have an 8.9, and generally the entire low 9 range got distributed into the 8. So the standard for a 9 increased, so I hope it enjoyed its 6 days as a 5-star book on Goodreads, but I have high hopes for An Autumn War or Price of Spring, which seem to be everyone except Johanna has their favorite in one of those 2. I thought this was just pretty good across the board. The first book I thought was solid, I thought more happened, but this was definitely a lot more eventful. As I said, the first time, very efficient character work. We have a perspective from kind of an antagonist who apparently a lot of people like as a person. I'm they're a really well-written antagonist. They just have no self-awareness and are incapable of accepting the fact that their actions might, be responsible. It's kind of an interesting situation. I started, when I got this character from a point of, sympathy where I wanted to root for her. She's the woman heir of it's the term isn't king, but it's monarch of this city, whatever. And the premise, which is in the prologue, is not a spoiler, is this monarch will have 3 sons in this line of succession, and 2 of the the 3 sons basically during their life, only one of them is allowed to live. The way you become kings, you kill your other brothers. So it's kind of weird because this lady is mad that she's not involved in this, and I'm like, girl, you'd probably just die, but whatever, cook. And yeah, there's just really good character dynamics. It's pretty tightly plotted as well, and it's just overall pretty damn solid. Very little action, good political tension, good writing. It was solid across the board, and I thought in the first book, I thought the character writing was very efficient. I got to know who people were quite quickly. But I didn't get the whoa, these are the moments of being amazed. And I got a couple of those here. So it steps up. I think after the rating adjustments, an 8.8 or something. Excellent book. After that, I read Left Hand of Darkness, which I'm holding up twice. Because this has Left Hand of Darkness in it. And is the version I read. Because I was going to read this edition of Left Hand of Darkness I have. But it's not just a tall paperback. It's the worst tall paperback I've ever seen. So I don't know if you can see this. Look how close the words are to the inside of the margin. To read the words in here, on this side of the page, you have to, rip the book open. It's pathetic. I am keeping this edition, though, because it has, the best forward of any book I've ever read, maybe. Anyway, Left Hand of Darkness. This was my second Ursula K. Le Guin sci-fi, and I've also read the books of Earthsea. The Dispossessed was the previous Le Guin sci-fi I read, which is easily my favorite Le Guin book. and that continues after Left Hand of Darkness. Left Hand of Darkness I thought was much more sci-fi than The Dispossessed, like a lot more... The beginning of The Dispossessed I found pretty instantly compelling, with Shevek and seeing the contrast in cultures, like, right away. This, I kind of was like, I was getting introduced to this world, and all these terms, and all these names, and I was like, I don't know really where the momentum of the story is. It's obviously, it's famous for being, like, the Ursula K. gender book, where it's on a planet where, everyone doesn't have a gender, like, for 27 days of the month. It's not really about that. It's about, like, the political tensions between two nations, and the main character who's, like, an ambassador for an outside society. Yeah. And I gave it, like, a 7 point something. It was, like, 7.3, because there were definitely times when I was, like, trying to read through it, because it was just throwing a lot of terms at me early on. But the back half I thought was pretty great. It did get me to care about the two characters a good amount. So I thought it was, like, a novel I solidly enjoyed. But I would say I enjoyed most of Earthsea more than I enjoyed Left Hand of Darkness, and I definitely enjoyed The Dispossessed more than Left Hand of Darkness. It is, I know, her most well-known sci-fi novel. I could see reading it, like, if you're more of a hard sci-fi reader, because I think the start is a little bit drier than The Dispossessed. If you want something more character-driven, or just if you want to read a fantasy, I would definitely go with The Dispossessed or Earthsea. I'm going to read the rest of the Gwyn stuff, though, so we'll see what I think later. Next, I'm holding up the book, but it was actually my audio reread. I now, at work, for some things that I'm doing at work, I can listen to stuff in the background, so I'm doing audio rereads, and I did Battleground. I did Peace Talks in December, but this is the January wrap-up, and there was definitely a December wrap-up that you can go watch, and I'm not lying. I did Battleground. Battleground rules. If you want more thoughts, see all the other times I've talked about Battleground. It goes incredibly hard. Just a shocking amount of craft and storytelling in what is based around a battle and character work. Like, actually the amount of foreshadowing and, like, things where I'm like, this is high quality storytelling in what's based around a battle is pretty incredible. I think it's Jim Butcher writing at his best. It goes incredibly hard. And the last book I read in the month of January was Disquiet Gods by Christopher Rocchio, which, for those of you who don't know, the e-arc is available on Bane's website to anyone who wishes to purchase it. This, like, the official release is in April or something, and this is Sun Eater book 6, and I loved it. It was fantastic. It's pretty comfortably in my top 2 Sun Eater books. I think I still like Demon in White a little bit more. This is the first one where I'm like, on reread, I could possibly like it more. This one definitely has the most lore in it. Like, the world building and lore goes pretty crazy and has more of a focus on that. There was... Like, I hadn't read Rocchio for a while, and I, like, remembered that he was a really good writer, but, like, 5 chapters in, I was like, damn, this boy writes well. Really, there was, like, a 50-page section, which most other people are seeming to like that entire section, but a 50-page section, like, around, I don't know, chapter, like, 15, where I felt progress wasn't being made, and I remember I was watching the Ken Liu, Ada Palmer podcast that was recently a thing, and someone was like, I sometimes ask myself, like, what's the next interesting thing I'm planning on happening, and why can't it happen now? And I felt that for about 40 pages. This is the level of nitpicking we'll get to. But then, after that, just, like, interesting things kept happening over and over again, and the book went completely bonkers. So this is my book of the month, pretty comfortably. We give it a 9.4 out of 10. Which is, like, borderline all-time favorite novel. Yeah, it ruled. Hadrian's such a good character. Where he's old at this point. I don't think that's a spoiler to say. Like, the book starts from page 1. You know, narrator Hadrian is really old, and he's, like, proper old. In some of the books, he's like, we'd consider him old because he's Palatine, lives a long time. But in this book, he's, like, actually old, and He actually feels like he's that old. Like, he's written that way. It's just his development and change over time is extraordinary. Yeah, man, and book went crazy. So that is it. That is what I read. I guess I also could mention I started the Silmarillion. I'm that far in, about halfway, but I think the actual Silmarillion part ends earlier. I don't know. Whatever. I'm on the next chapter I'm reading is the Baron and Luthien chapter. For those of you who remember the Silmarillion, that's where I am. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this completely regular and non-surprising wrap up. Let me know if you have read any of these. If you're going to be reading Disquiet Gods, are you reading the Ark? Are you reading it when it comes out? Have you not started the Sun Eater? Have you started and don't like the Sun Eater, so won't be reading it? Are you currently reading the Sun Eater, hoping to catch up? Yeah, have a good day, everyone.